Some heroes don't wear capes or medals on their chest. Some push mop buckets down silent hallways, quietly carrying the weight of wars and memories. This is the story of Colonel Frank Martinez, a forgotten war hero whose true rank was revealed not with fanfare, but through quiet dignity and unwavering service. Look closely at 83-year-old Frank Martinez. He grips his mop as a young cadet laughs and says, "Hey, old man, you missed a spot with my boots." What the cadet doesn't know is this: Frank once flew fighter jets over Vietnam, and tomorrow morning, for the first time in 20 years, the base commander will call him by his real rank. Frank pushed his mop bucket down the quiet hall of Peterson Air Force Base. His old boots squeaked on the polished floor. Even at 83, his back was straight, and his silver hair was cut short, military style. This was his favorite time: early shift. Few people around, less noise, just him, his thoughts, and the soft rhythm of cleaning. He had worked here as the night janitor ever since his wife Maria passed away 15 years ago. The house was too empty, but the base, it still felt like home. He had walked these halls before, once as a respected officer. Now, cadets passed by him without a second glance. To them, he was just Frank the janitor. No medals, no title, just the name stitched on his navy blue uniform. And that's how he wanted it, simple and quiet. Frank had joined the Air Force in 1960, fresh out of high school in San Antonio. His sharp eyes and steady hands made him a natural pilot. He flew F-4 Phantoms in Vietnam. High above the jungle, he saw beauty from 30,000 feet and horror below. He never spoke of the missions that went wrong, the friends who didn't make it, or the nights he woke in a sweat to the sound of phantom engines. He stayed in the military for 28 years, rising to full colonel before retiring in 1988. And through it all was Maria. She knew his silences, his pain, his stare into nothing. And when she fell sick, Frank stood by her side like she had stood by his. After the funeral, the house was too quiet. He didn't need money. His pension covered that. He needed purpose, and the base gave it back to him. Here, surrounded by uniforms and memories, he could serve again, even if no one knew. The trouble started on a Tuesday. Frank was cleaning near the cadet training wing when a group of teenagers came by, laughing and loud. One tall cadet pointed at the floor. "Hey, old man, you missed a spot with my boots." The others laughed. Frank nodded calmly and mopped the spotless floor. He knew some fights weren't worth it. But the cadet kept going. "Look at this guy. Probably did nothing in life. Just live off the system, mopping floors." Another chimed in. "My dad says guys like him are why our military budget is wasted." "Dead weight," someone muttered. Frank kept mopping, his jaw clenched. These boys, who had never heard a shot fired in anger, mocked a man who had flown through it. Then the lead cadet kicked over his mop bucket. Soapy water splashed across the floor. "Oops! Sorry, old man. Better clean that too. Maybe get it right this time." They laughed and walked off. Frank stood there, water soaking into his boots. His grip tightened around the mop until his knuckles turned white. In that moment, he felt the weight of all 83 years, not from age, but from the deep ache of being forgotten. These boys were meant to be future leaders, yet they couldn't see the hero standing in front of them. Frank bent down, his knees stiff, and started cleaning the mess with paper towels. Alone in the hallway, just him and the pain. He thought about the medals in the box at home, the friends he had buried, the courage it took to fly back through enemy fire just to bring others home. And now, he was just an old man with a mop. For a second, he let himself remember the past. Walking these same halls in uniform, cadets saluting as he passed. And somewhere deep inside, he heard Maria's voice, soft and clear. "You were always important, Frank. Real service isn't about who's watching. It's about what you do when no one is." Frank wrung out his mop and emptied the water bucket. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And Frank had always taken pride in honest work, whether flying fighter jets or mopping floors. He looked at the rowdy cadets across the hall. Maybe one day they'd learn to respect others, or maybe not. Either way, Frank had work to do. Over the next few days, things got worse. The same group of cadets kept making life harder. They dumped trash in clean rooms. They tracked mud where he had just mopped, and they made loud jokes about the old janitor. Frank said nothing. He cleaned their mess, emptied their trash cans, and kept his head down. But others on base began to notice. Senior Master Sergeant Rodriguez was furious. He tried to speak to the cadets, but they laughed him off. Then came Friday. Frank was preparing the assembly hall for a big ceremony the next morning. He wanted everything to be perfect. That's when the same cadets walked in, laughing. They tossed paper balls at him. One walked up and knocked his card over. Cleaning bottles crashed to the floor. "That's what happens when you don't pay attention, old man," the cadet smirked. Frank paused. He looked at the mess. Something shifted in his face. A quiet strength showed, just for a moment. The cadets didn't notice, but someone else did. Word spread quickly through the base. By that evening, the right people had heard. Saturday morning, the hall was packed. Cadets, officers, dignitaries. Frank stayed in the background, making sure all was ready. Then, the base commander, General Patricia Hayes, took the stage. Before closing the ceremony, she spoke. "Some of our cadets," she said, "have forgotten what respect means. They've forgotten that all service matters, not just the kind with rank or medals." The hall fell silent. Frank, still in work clothes, was cleaning in the back. Then the general said, "Please come forward, Colonel Frank Martinez." Gasps filled the room. Frank's mop fell to the floor, heads turned, and the cadets who had mocked him turned pale. Frank walked slowly to the front. His old boots echoed on the floor. "Colonel Martinez," the general said, "Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 tours in Vietnam, 28 years of service to our country." Frank stood tall, worn clothes, proud heart. The general turned toward the cadets. "This man is a war hero, and you treated him like trash." The crowd stood and clapped, a thunder of applause that shook the room. For the first time in years, they truly saw Frank Martinez. Then, the cadets who had mocked him were called forward. They stood in front of Frank, ashamed, quiet. The lead cadet barely managed to speak. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know. I had no right to treat you like that." Frank looked at each of them. He saw their shame. He saw his younger self. Then, for the first time that day, he spoke. "You didn't know because I didn't tell you. But respect doesn't depend on someone's rank or title. It should be given to everyone, because we're all human, trying to do our duty." The room erupted in a standing ovation. 5 full minutes. No one saw just a janitor anymore. They saw a man of honor. On Monday, when Frank came back to work, everything was different. Cadets nodded with respect. Officers shook his hand. Some young cadets even offered to help him mop, just to learn from the man who had served in war, and in silence. Frank would sometimes smile, quietly touching the photo of Maria he kept in his pocket. He had found his purpose again, not just at work, but in the lesson. True honor isn't about titles or medals. It's about how you live, how you serve, and how you treat others. Some battles are fought with weapons, but the most important ones, they're won with heart, courage, and the strength to keep going, even when no one sees. Frank never asked for recognition, but when it finally came, it wasn't just about his past. It was about a timeless truth. Respect isn't earned through titles, but through character. Let this story remind us all. Treat everyone with dignity. You never know the battles they've already fought.